Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rolling Stories, where we explore the real journey behind HR leadership and transformation. I'm Adrian Tan.
And I'm Manu Ketan. Today we are diving into a leadership philosophy that challenges conventional wisdom, the shift from celebrating star performers to building star teams.
Exactly. And because for decades, HR has been obsessed with identifying and nurturing top talent, the individual high performers who drive results. But what if that focus is actually holding organizations back? Our guest today has spent over 2 decades in HR leadership, including senior roles at PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, and now as the head of HR for Southeast Asia and Singapore at BD. His journey reveals a fundamental rethinking of how we develop talent and measure success.
From transforming performance management systems at Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages to his ongoing Leaders Under Light interview series, he's been at the forefront of exploring how leadership needs to evolve. Whether you are an HR professional, a people leader, or someone navigating organizational dynamics, this conversation will challenge how you think about talent and team performance.
Gaurav Sharma, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Adrian, Manu, to have me here. It's a pleasure to meet both of you.
So, Gaurav, we will talk a little bit more about your philosophy because there is some research that I have done which is a little bit on the other side actually. But the conversation is going to be very, very interesting. And that's the whole idea of sharing our experience with the audience. But may I ask you that what was the trigger point that you changed your focus or philosophy from star performers to star teams?
Interesting question. Thank you for that, Manu. And like you said, I have got about more than 2 decades, which makes me ancient in today's parlance. But again, I will talk about a defining moment, maybe 15, 16 years ago. And this was when I was taking helm of a small business. I started working with a new leader who had moved from Germany to this part of the world in Southeast Asia. First time for him outside Europe. And interestingly for me, when I started working with him, my philosophy was around having star players in the team, ensuring that you hire the best people for the roles. And that kind of came from the competitive culture or came from achieving results and being the first amongst everybody. But when I started working with this individual, I realized that all he was trying to drive was how can I have a collection of star players in my team? And to understand his philosophy, one had to look at his background. He was a sports person. He used to play rugby during his university. And I mean, from his looks, you could say that he must have been a good player.
Okay.
And he would often talk about, I can get the best people in this organization. I can ensure I hire whoever's the best in this particular field. But that will not necessarily elevate the level of performance for this organization. What I need to do is get a team of people who have complementary skills. For example, just like what you see in soccer. A team is not just 1 or 2 star performers. A team is basically a collection of people who know what their role is, who have the complementary skills. Whether we talk about soccer, rugby in this example, or even my favorite sport, cricket. We need to have a team wherein all 11 players are contributing to their role at their optimum. And that's really what needs to happen at the workplace. You can have 1-star performer, you can have 1-star team, but when it all comes together, a chain is as strong as the weakest link. It will fall apart. And how long will you continue to leverage one strength, one team? You need all of them to fire together, because a high-performing team, the definition is a set of people who have complementary skills. And I have seen that change in leadership over the years, from hiring leaders who are like them to hiring leaders who bring very different, diverse set of skills. So a team becomes an amalgamation of people who have very diverse thinking, different backgrounds, and of course, they bring an alternative view to the table, which helps the organization to look at a problem from a 360 point of view, which helps you to look at areas that you perhaps would not be thinking about. And all of us have our limitations. The moment you work with people who are from different backgrounds, those limitations are reduced because somebody else is there to complement your limitation with their strengths. And that overlap creates a high performing team where you have the best performance, peak performance. And from that leader, I learned instead of focusing again and again on hiring the best people, focus on creating a work environment where you have clear accountability, roles are clearly defined, and you build trust. And that's really the genesis of creating high performance.
At the beginning, when I was actually asking you that I have another view on that, but I just recognize that at the end of the day, it's the same thing. So what I mean to say is, and I think it will be good for the audience to understand, there is a research that I do on R7. So it's a framework. We say the whole idea of that framework is you have in an organization, you have A players, B players, and C players. Now, you go to the best of the best organization or you go to the best of the best institute. At the end of the day, there is always going to be a percentile, right? And then you can define A, B, and C. But then the reality is, okay, in the R7 I mentioned, try to bring B and C players to A players, and so that the performance, so that the percentage of A players increase, and constantly reduce the percentage of B and C, and the people who are not able to fit, you release them through the release framework, which is the last R7. So you say recruit, retain, redeploy, redevelop, rate, release, and then rehire the A players whom you were not able to retain actually. But then what I understand is the reality is, if the most important thing in R7 that I say is that the roles have to be absolutely defined clearly so that you are not making a judgment on performance versus potential. Potential is the individual capability and performance is for the organization, which is probably a team sport that you're mentioning about. And then when you are trying to fit the right person in the right role, their performance will elevate. You can still call them an A star player, but you are not just going on and just looking for certain top level skills or charismatic people who are A players, but you are defining the role and getting the right people, which is the concept of star teams. But I think it's an amazing concept because, and I'm definitely going to include that in my research, because I imagine that while I completely in sync with what you said, but then when I put my research out, a lot of people who are using it probably may get confused and just look at star players. But then at the end of the day, what will work is star teams, but it's the same concept. At the end of the day, the A players are the ones who are performing. And if the team is performing, they are winning. Everybody is a performer. And the moment you are contributing as whichever, I'm not a big expert in soccer, but then, there are different positions actually. So if somebody is doing a great job at defending and he cannot do striking and you can't put basically them at the front, that's all right. And then they are performer, which is A player actually, right? But yeah.
Yes, and they are different frameworks. And let me just again, for us to understand our current, it's important to know where we're coming from, our history. So if you look at how productivity and performance in teams came into place, what were the leadership models that we grew up with? You mentioned some words like charismatic leaders. You mentioned some words like getting a team of star players and things will take care. That was pretty much the model that people used to work with. If you think about what we've read, whether we talk about Jack Welch, we talk about Leo Iacocca, Henry Ford, they were star leaders because they had a vision, and come what may, they would follow that vision and people would fall in line because they would inspire people's confidence to follow them. This was a time before you had social media. This is a time where knowledge was democratized, where you could go and access information at the speed of thought. With these changes happening after technology started proliferating our day to day, after technology started getting into our hands, after knowledge is no longer a domain of few people, it is democratized. If I need to find out about what happened in a certain organization, why is this leadership change, I will get 5 different versions of that. So today, leaders need to change along with that. The leadership model needs to change along with that. And I've seen the evolution over a period of time. Coming back to my previous example, so the leader was talking about, I need to hire people who are smarter than me. And don't get me wrong, when I say smarter than me, it means domain expertise.
Yes.
I need to hire people
different skills
for what they do and what they do well. But does it mean that they are the industry standard for that work? Maybe not. For example, we were talking about soccer. let's say if my team has been facing issues with with defending, I need strong defenders and I need a very strong goalkeeper. Coming back to a team which is struggling to strike, I need good strikers, centre forwards, who will actually go and take the game to the other half of the team. So you need to know what is a business context and what you need to build, and then hire people who will not only subscribe to your organizational vision, but will subscribe to your culture. And values.
Yes.
Essentially, and I thought it's too early to talk about it, but since you did say you speak about the 7 R's and the boxes, which are basically stages of talent management.
Yes.
When do you build versus buy? When do you bounce versus bind?
Yes.
When do you borrow in versus borrow out?
Exactly.
Right? For building those critical skill sets.
Yes.
And that's a conversation that is between potential and people who will see the organization in the future. Take the organization towards next 5 years, next 10 years. But coming back to today's context, in today's context, we also need to look at my team. Are the people clear about what are the roles assigned to them? What are the expectations from them? And how do I hold them accountable?
Yes.
I did say that I thought we'll come to it later, but let's talk about Jack Welch, who spoke about the critical 20-70-10, which became legendary in terms of the performance bell curve.
Yep.
And since we are talking about optimizing performance, he would say 20% are your top performers, 70% people are delivering results, and 10% people are not meeting standards and they need to go. So you continuously create challenge in the organization, internal challenge in the organization. During his last few days in GE, I think 2001 is when he passed the helm over to Jeff Immelt. In his last shareholder report, annual report, he had mentioned that there are 4 kinds of managers, and that stuck with me. He mentioned that there are 4 kinds of managers that we need to be aware of. On our 2x2 matrix, one axis is on results, the other is on vision, company vision. So he said there are 4 kinds of managers. One, who deliver results and they believe in the company's vision. Keepers, star performers, continue to grow, continue to give them different challenges, bind them in the organization. The second category are people who deliver results, but at times they falter as well. They probably are not consistent with performance, but at the same time, they believe in the company's vision, the company's fabric, the company's culture. Coach, mentor, give them a chance or two. That's where your build philosophy comes into place. Then he spoke about the third kind of people who are not able to deliver results sustainably. They may have a good quarter or two, but they're not able to build on that. And they don't agree with the company's culture or the company's fabric. They constantly keep talking about it was better in my previous organization, or I've seen other companies which are changing, doing so better. Let them be gone. Very categorically, that's what he said. Most interestingly, the fourth category he spoke about, people who deliver results, but they don't subscribe to the company's culture and the vision. It's very difficult to find them, firstly, and the dilemma of what to do with them. Because they are delivering on results, they are building onto your performance metrics, your KPIs, but over a period of time, they will dent the very culture that you're trying to build. They will create more problems. They will create a culture which is not aligned with the overall org culture that you're trying to build. And this is where you may have seen that some departments start operating in silos. Some countries break into their own silos. Let's say I'm part of a regional team. However, I know that the way of working in a certain country is very different from the way it is in the rest of the region. And that's because we have someone who's constantly bringing value from a results point of view, but is not aligned with the central vision, central culture.
And that compounds.
And that compounds.
And you don't know. And before you know that the organization is out of your hands, actually, right? And then it requires completely overhaul.
Yes. And then they hire people who are like them. So all of a sudden, like you said, it is compounded. Your problem is not just the leader. Your problem is the entire team.
Yeah.
And a high-performing team It's not star players. It's a set of people who have complementary skills and they know what is their role.
And they believe in the shared vision. And I think that's where the passion comes about, right? We talk about it. Okay, passion is an overused term, but the shared vision is like everybody believes in it.
Correct.
And that's where that brings people together. You know, like team sports, people come, the audience actually who come in, shared vision, my team is going to win. And it just brings different people together actually, right?
Correct.
And yeah,
Correct.
but it's very solid point. Thanks for sharing, Gaurav. Yeah.
And you would have seen that in many, again, I'm going to sports, because sports is a very good analogy for business performance. Because in a sport, for 90 odd minutes, you need to be at peak performance. Your objective is very clear, your competition is in front of you. When you bring it to the organization, of course, our work periods are quarter to quarter.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't know who our competition is.
Yes.
Right? So when you look at sports, again, it's very clear. What are you trying to achieve? How will you know you're successful? And for team players who continue to gather limelight, work as individuals and not as a team player, over a period of time, 1 season, at best 2 seasons, they are loaned or they're sold to some other club.
Yeah, I agree.
and still very much on this soccer metaphor, I think it reminds me of Real Madrid Galacticos era, where every single player on the field is a star player. And you would think by default,
Yeah.
you know, it's like playing FIFA, right? Oh, let me just get the best player in each position. I'm going to win the game.
Yeah.
But who won the game? Not them. Yeah. So I think that is really a reiteration of how you want to get a team rather than just a loose group of star players thinking that they can come together and become a team. But having said that, I think I want to also understand, with that said, I think it's very clear, the logic is very clear to us. But why is that not being practiced in so many organizations? What is this oversight that people get caught up in that does not allow them to see that I actually need to have a functioning team rather than a functioning individual?
Yes, and this is the domain or the intersection where consulting companies play a big role, because you are able to take a outside-in view and talk about, hey, if I were to see this from an outsider-in point of view, I see you have 10 star departments, but you don't have a star team. They work in their own silos. They don't communicate at every level. They communicate at the top. So essentially problems are pushed up and then they are debated at the top level. Then they are implemented in a silo. So where is the network leveraging the power of collaboration? Where is that happening? Right. So just one example. Jack Welch, on the 4th category of managers who deliver results but don't believe in the company's vision or culture. And he said, ask them to go and tell people why they have gone. So a lesson from that statement is that in our own organizations, while we manage by metrics, we are clear about the annual operating plans. We are clear about how does that translate into my quarter, my month, my weekly, my daily targets or goals, achievements. But what's most important in that is, how do I pin accountability? How do I define the ways of working so that there is collaboration, there is a network, and you are able to leverage people who may be best positioned to solve a particular problem. So for example, if there's an issue with your demand planning, finance can help, supply chain can help, but do you have people in analytics who can look at the data and look at where is the bottleneck? What's happening between our vendors and our manufacturing upstream? What's happening midstream? What's happening downstream? So ensure that you know what the problem you're trying to solve and you provide it to the right people. And that will happen if you are not working in a silo, if you are creating that levels of collaboration. Remember, the way you behave in a boardroom is exactly the behavior that people will demonstrate outside. If there is a lot of siloed operation in the boardroom where people only talk about their functions, the hat that they're wearing is functional and not enterprise, that's exactly what's happening outside. The moment you start wearing an enterprise hat, the moment I start talking not as an HR leader, but as a business leader, trying to empathize and understand the problem. Yes, my role is defined, but I can empathize with the problem and provide my point of view. And the moment that happens, my team knows it's important for them to build that business acumen, be involved, be embedded in the business so they can understand and solve a problem where it exists or where it operates. Instead of escalating it all the way up, getting decisions, and then talking about we don't feel empowered to think through problems and deliver solutions.
On that note, I'm also wondering then how much of it would be, in fact, the individual's responsibility and how much of it would be actually the leader's responsibility? Because again, going back to soccer or football, it is very easy for a coach to say, oh, we got the wrong player, that's why he's not scoring. That player is not in the right mindset, that's why it's not happening. But is it just the player's fault? And if that is not the case, how much of it is on the leaders to try to create that environment or that culture where people can actually start coming together and moving towards to become a star team?
As I was saying, leadership model is changing. So instead of having leaders who had their own teams and they would, be charismatic and they would believe, I can give you any color as long as it's black. From that time to now, where the leaders are actually being comfortable that I don't know all the answers. But what I do know is to build a team of complementary skill sets and provide them the right working environment, both positive and negative. What do I mean by that? To your point, have clear negative consequences. When accountabilities are not met, when role clarity is lacking, what will happen? At the same time, positive consequences. Once we achieve a certain goal as a team, as a business, what's in it for the team? What's in it for the leaders? So defining that clearly. Building on this example further, how do you create an ecosystem where people want to deliver more than what is in their job descriptions? And believe me, in HR, I've seen job descriptions. And today, I think that's one document which should not exist. Because your job description is to ensure that your business is successful. And whatever needs to happen to make that, to achieve that, you need to work on that. Now, if that means that as an HR, you need to partner finance, or you need to partner supply chain, or you need to actually get crunching with numbers along with your with your analytics team, so be it. So job descriptions were limitations of the old era. And I said, and as I was saying, the way we are working is changing from the utility aspect of work, that I come, I work 8 hours and I go back. With technology proliferating our day to day, it's no longer the utility aspect of work, it's the experiential aspect of work. So when people come to the workplace, like the question you were asking, are they connected to what they're doing on a daily basis? Are they clear about the why? And I know we've read the books about start with the why, etc. The basic principle is what? It needs to appeal to the heart. The heart needs to be completely bought into, why am I coming to this workplace? What am I trying to create here? And once that is done, that's when the mind comes into place, wherein the mind starts thinking, what am I trying to solve? Instead of waiting for people to come and tell you, what are you trying to solve, or this is what you need to work on, have the empowerment so people can think through, what is the problem that I'm trying to solve? Once you have done that, put it into action. Hands come into place about what's the plan of getting these things done and ensuring that I can close the loop so I know whether it's working or what tweaks need to happen. How do I recalibrate my strategy after that? And that's really how the work loop needs to move. From a leadership point of view, I think leaders now are more about managing change and coaching people for their peak performance. And these two things are very different. So when I talk about change in today's world, as you know, our planning cycles are getting shorter and shorter. From 5-year plans, long-range plans, to 3-year plans, to annual plans, to quarter plans, and now month-on-month review of those. Few organizations have done away with and long-range plans because they know long-range plans, you will have no value because you may have a change in the socio-political environment wherein a decision will be made which you have no control over, and that will impact 25% of your business.
Yeah.
So how do you create that agility in your team? By ensuring that your people understand that they need to think about the problem end to end, at the same time be agile enough to understand why are we doing this. And it needs to be larger than profit. It needs to be larger than just ensuring the basic hygiene needs are met. It needs to be something that appeals to the heart. It needs to be something that people can connect with, and when they talk about it, their mind resonates that yes, this is something I want to be associated with longer term. Once you've done that, you need to talk about what will good look like. What's the picture of success? Clearly define that as a leader. And I think that's the challenge. Leaders normally are seen they have good vision because they've thought through and they have the experience and they believe in a certain philosophy. But converting that into what will good look like? How will that be translated into a success story, picture of success? Translating that into what's in it for me, for the associates, for the teams, very important. And once you've done that, you need to give a definitive plan. Because remember, people don't resist change. They resist being changed because of the uncertainty, the fear of what will happen. So how do you help people overcome that bump? That's a job of the leader. So you need to create a plan of what will exactly happen. And I think HR is poised very well to lead the business on this planning, on this change management. Once this has happened, please see this through, communicate exactly what you want people to do. So there is no ambiguity.
Yeah.
Like I said, change is all about uncertainty. So as much of uncertainty that we can remove, ambiguity we can remove, the more successful the change and sustainable it will be in its implementation. So this would help you with managing the change, which is what the leaders are doing. So in our socio-political environment, so many changes are happening, right? And we keep listening to different news depending on morning, evening. In that context, how do you keep people clued in to the objectives?
That's very true. Gaurav, on one of the points that you mentioned, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question, or so to say, your viewpoint. You mentioned that job descriptions, this is one document that the organization should not have. I get your complete point that if your role is very much tied as a mentality to a one pager, then you would not collaborate and change with the organization what the business needs. And the business needs are constantly changing because we are living in a dynamic world. Honestly speaking, everybody has been living in a dynamic world forever. And so the business is always dynamic. However, if you look at it, that when you are looking for a person, and that connects to our star team versus this thing. So when we are looking for a defender, or when we are looking for a striker, to me, that's the role. And in a role, I personally feel, and that is also part of my research, that the job descriptions are wrongly written by wrong people. You have to make sure that the job description should be written by the people who have vision for the organization. People who want to, like, for example, you were mentioning about Jack Welch and the 2x2. Somebody who knows the entire organization and who knows what is the vision and what type of people will fit in. And there is this very famous concept of Dave Ulrich. He mentioned about a KSA concept: knowledge, skills, and attitude. And so he mentions that, and I will not go into that because that's a very long topic actually, and I think, Gaurav, you are an expert in that. But to ask my question, a simple job description is about, you have a title, so you are a defender or you are a striker. What is the usual tasks that today I envisage that you will be coming into the organization and doing? Again, we talk about a description of specific tasks about what does a defender do and all. And then what are the skills needed for that? It could be functional and technical skills. And I would say it can also be soft skills needed for that particular task. And that soft skills can have a flavor of the culture that your organization basically has. And then lastly, how will we hold you accountable for that? You can call it KPI, or you can call it measurement parameters, or it could be KRS, could be anything actually. But a small section about how are we going to hold you accountable, because we are putting it down in the beginning itself without any confusion later. So these three sections should be there, and somebody who is having a vision and who's completely aligned to the organization should ensure that every single job description is cleared by him or her. Now, this is my view, but I completely get your point. Then, because you have a research and a viewpoint on this topic, I would like to ask you that, then do you think still that we should get away with that, or what was your viewpoint on that, probably around that?
So I'll get into trouble, right? Because I said job descriptions are not needed.
Yeah.
And tomorrow when we are hiring, we need a document. We need a reference point.
Yes.
So essentially, job descriptions are reference points. But I will challenge all your listeners on the podcast, all your viewers on the podcast, please look at the recent job description that you're using. When was that document last changed? Updated.
Yes.
Look at the document control. Look at when was the last time it was updated.
Yeah.
Was it done before the world changed so fast when we started spinning at 2x the speed?
Yeah.
Or was it done maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago and the job description has not been updated? Second, who is writing your job description?
Yes.
Is it artificial intelligence? Or is there a group of people who are looking at the jobs of the future?
I call it wrong use of,
translating-
sorry to interrupt you, Gaurav, wrong use of AI. But sorry, continue. Please continue.
Okay, that's very debatable, right? Because AI is talking about productivity, and this is a productive way.
Yes.
But if AI is writing your job descriptions, what is AI relying on?
Exactly.
It's relying on past data.
Yeah.
And past data is again version control 2020, 2019.
Yes.
Right? So please have a look at that. This will be a challenge for the viewers and maybe a provocation. At the same time, my belief over the years, and this is empirical because like you said, research, and this is data that you capture as you work and as you speak to people, as you see what's worked, what's not worked. It's empirical. Is you hire for will and you build for skill. What do I mean by this? The will part is essentially somebody's grit, somebody's resilience of not whether they fail. It's absolutely fine to fail. And if people are not failing or if people are not making mistakes, they are not going fast
They're not
enough.
pushing it. Yeah.
They are not pushing it, right?
And there you are not giving a psychologically safe environment to do that. Then you are not going to innovate, actually, right? Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely fine. And you need to create a workplace where people can say, I messed up. But resilience is how quickly they can get up from there and iterate to 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. That's the point which is the will part. So associates, she or he, who has the will, the resilience, and then again I'm introducing one more word here called the grit, which is how do I find connection in ambiguous situations? How do I find pattern with data which is not connected in this world which is brittle, which is non-linear, which is ambiguous, which is incomprehensible?
Yeah.
How do I bring clarity?
And that's the job of the leader, actually, right? Because the problems will be there and those are the opportunities in a way, right? Yeah.
So when people look up to you as a leader, let's say you're both the leaders, and when you're running an enterprise, people look up to you for clarity. And you know very well that at this point in time, you have limited information. You yourself have limited clarity. So how do you provide people a picture of success, connect them back to the purpose, provide them smaller chunks of what can happen in the nearer term? So you bring some element of certainty, remove some element of anxiety. And as you keep building this clarity, you will notice that people start following it and they start experimenting, they start raising the hand when they fail, and they start being comfortable with iteration. And that's really what an agile organization is.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant by hire for will and build for skill.
Oh, thank you, Gaurav. I think Adrian, I have taken too many of your questions. But then yes.
Actually, I just want to point out, I think this first question has led to so many different interesting tangents that we are still stuck at question number one.
Okay, which is great.
But I would like to, of course, move on to, because you have cited so many different reference points, Jack Welch, etc., Henry Ford, and also a shout out for audience out there in case you missed it in the opening. Gaurav here also has his own podcast. So I'd like to understand about some of the key highlights or some of the key learnings that you have isolated or identified throughout this podcast. But before that, maybe help us to understand a bit more about this podcast. What is it about? What motivated you? How many episodes? And then we can go into some of the key highlights.
So this started off when I moved to an assignment in India. After being in Southeast Asia for about 15 odd years, I took an assignment in my previous work life with Coca-Cola in India. And I went there and I realized that the leadership model, as I was saying, is changing. And what better way of showing the picture of success to people than hearing it from their own leaders? And that's how the idea of Leaders Under Light came into being, 2.0. And we started hearing stories from the leaders about what makes them the leader that they are. And we would have done about 10, 12 episodes. And interestingly, every leader had a different story. That connects to my central point, which is diversity. You should have people with different varied backgrounds because they bring all that experience and knowledge to the table. So they will look at things from a different dimension. Organizations will be at a risk if you have people who think in one way, who overuse their strengths. And one way of breaking that is to get people from different backgrounds. And to your point, providing them a safe space so they can voice it out. No consequences. At the same time, being clear about what's expected from them. And once you do this, organizations are here not always for charity. Then there is a central commitment that you have to your shareholders, right? And to achieve that, positive and negative consequences are very important. So people are clear about what are the positive outcomes that will happen or will accrue for myself and my team if we achieve the outcomes, and what are the negative consequences that will happen if we are not able to do it.
No, I think that is one of the things, of course, the audience, and of course, I am definitely taking away about the way you put the positive and negative. Most of the time we say, let's be positive, let's show the good picture and tell everyone. Then sometimes some leaders basically say, if you don't do this, this will happen. And they are most of the time giving negative consequences. But I think the right thing is, of course, balance is the magical word. But I think the right thing is you have to balance both. You have to mention both.
All a reference point. People need a reference point. JD is what? It's a reference point.
Exactly.
When you are meeting an external candidate or even looking at internal talent to move up, you need to reference them against a certain guideline, a certain prescriptive expectation. That's really what JDs are.
Yeah.
Similarly, consequences are about what happens if we are able to achieve the outcomes and what happens if we are not able to. And then you break it down in terms of behaviors. If we have not been able to achieve the outcomes, but hey, you know what? We did all we could.
Yeah.
No worries.
That's perfect. Yes,
That's
absolutely.
a great learning.
Yeah.
Or we tried our best. We went for a pitch. We spoke to the right the right stakeholders. We had the right material. We had the right stakeholder mapping. We had the right proposal, the right solutions. It didn't click for whatever reasons.
Yes.
But that's a great learning.
That's a great learning, absolutely. No, I think on that point, I want to mention from my own experience as leading a sales team actually in my business. One of the things I tell them actually is that you cannot have control on any outcome, clearly, but that doesn't mean that you will not win.
Yep.
If you are knowing that you are losing, then you need to figure out how can you convert that to a win. If you are knowing that you are winning, you can't be complacent. But at the end of the day, when you win or lose, it doesn't really matter. You give your best. The average sum of giving your best is the highest probability of you achieving most of the time a winning outcome. And losses are absolutely imperative. There is no way you will not lose. But that's perfectly fine actually. But then you just have to basically make sure that you give your best actually and in finding it out.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I would just underpin that as a leader, you will need to be comfortable with metrics. You need to be comfortable with numbers, and then balance it off with the reference points of positive as well as negative consequences or rewards, as I would say. But just remember that at the end of the day, balance the right and the left brain. The right brain is very important for you to look at things from a people point of view, from a culture point of view, from a sustainability point of view. Because the main purpose cannot just be profits or cannot just be a goal for few individuals. It needs to have a larger connect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we need to keep that connect real. And that's when leaders become, I would say, they excel not just at their role, but they become community leaders. That's where we start following them.
Yeah.
They get subscription,
Yeah.
and their quotes become inspirational
Yes.
because they've somewhere elevated the level of thinking, not just for their teams, for their organization, but for the larger community.
Yeah, very rightly
So-
said. Yeah. Gaurav, I think I did not realize how the conversation went actually, and it was just flowing. So thank you for the amazing thoughts. I think the audience is going to love it actually. But maybe before we start the rapid fire, can I request you to share what is going to be the future profile of a leader in the current world going to look like?
I've seen increasingly the leaders are very comfortable with ambiguity. They are being more successful. With ambiguity comes agility, resilience, and grit, and what I spoke about. The other piece I've realized is they're very comfortable with people, culture, and they don't just look at it superficially. They do double clicks. They spend time in getting to know the people they'll work with. They spend time in having lunches with the people they want to hire. They spend time in finding out what motivates the people in their team to give their best. And this mix of number orientation, which is mostly left brain, and this people orientation, which is right brain, is what is making leaders successful. And to cap it all, the humility that you don't know everything. So the right profile of a future leader or aspiring leader is like a CFO and like a CHRO. But don't ask me what percentage. A mix of both.
Yeah, that's something we all have to figure out along the way.
No, but
So-
amazingly said, Gaurav, that people who are comfortable with ambiguity, people who are comfortable with people, at the end of the day, that's all matters, right? Meaning, after we are born, the only thing that we do is engaging with people, whether our own or the one that become our own or the external world, actually, right? But that's all, actually, right? So you have to be comfortable with them to be able to lead them, actually, right? Yeah.
So, Gaurav, before we let you go, we got a quick rapid fires round. So, first thing that comes to your mind, no overthinking. Okay?
Okay.
Manu, go first.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What's your go-to way to unwind after work?
Music.
One HR myth you wish would disappear forever.
Performance management works.
Okay.
If HR had a superpower, what would it be?
Managing change for people.
What's the best career advice you've ever received?
You have all the resources within you to succeed.
If you could automate one part of your job tomorrow, what would it be?
Performance management.
If you weren't in HR, what would you be doing? Don't mention podcast host because you are very good at it.
I would perhaps be a medico. I'd be in the medical field.
Okay, that's an interesting one.
Still dealing with people.
So many people, okay. People as in their body parts instead of the human brain.
Something like that, yeah.
So Gaurav, thank you so much for sharing your insights and stories with us today. I really learned a lot of interesting stuff, and I must tell our audience, really, today we go off script entirely. We only managed to cover such a small little part because the conversation is so interesting. And I think to the key point that I really take away from this is leaders got to be a bit more intentional. You got to paint the picture for people. You can't just say, oh, if good, this happened, if bad, that happens, and expect people to imagine what it would be. If you cannot narrate it out, nobody would know.
No, absolutely. And I think, Gaurav, it was honestly one of the best conversations I have had in the recent past. We've done many, many episodes, but I think the way you were sharing from your experience and from your wisdom that you have bigged throughout the years was amazing. There is so much to learn more from you, and I definitely feel we should ask you in the future to come back again.
There should be a part
on
2.
the podcast, because there's so many things today itself I'm taking away from this podcast, which actually I would definitely first of all pen it down so that I don't forget them, and then reflect upon it. And to that, I always think about what is the bestest thing that I learned from the podcast today. I think today is the easiest one because that's the topic of our podcast. Also, the star teams versus the star performers. I think that's a very, very deep thought. Everybody should think about that. And I think this can be applied to entire organization strategy. And people can just get leverage from this particular thought itself in their strategy, which will bring a lot of value. I mean, if you quantify numbers, maybe millions and billions actually. So we will leave audience with that particular thought. Think about team performance rather than individual performance. And Gaurav, thank you very much.
And for those of
Absolutely.
you who cannot get enough of Gaurav right now, do check out his podcast, Leaders Under Lights. You can find it wherever you get your podcast. And thanks to everyone who is listening or watching this. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, rate, and share Rolling Stories. We'll be back soon with more authentic stories from the world of HR. Until then, keep rolling forward.
And remember, HR is not a cost center.